One of the best produced shows in modern TV right now, with its addicting character stories, gritty realism, and a look at the real struggles behind a thriving or successful restaurant. The Bear is absolutely cooking with greatness. Welcome to Easily Entertained. I'm your host, Bryson Olson, here to give you all the latest on entertainment. Today, we are talking about the hit series, The Bear. It's absolutely wonderful. It's on Hulu. If you haven't seen it already, go check it out, then come back and watch this video. Or you can watch this video anyways. Do whatever. So let's start with chaotic characters. So part of the appeal of The Bear has been how real it feels to watch, and we'll talk more about the realism in general in a little bit, so stay tuned for that part. But a huge part of reality is having realistic characters, and boy does this show have no lack of them. And it's not even just the main characters. No. There is character development and three-dimension everywhere. They don't leave anybody out. For example, one of the characters that we see kind of more in the first two seasons than we do in a little bit of the third, is his name's Ibra. So he works in the restaurant at the very start of the series, and back then it's called The Beef, and they serve like Italian beef sandwiches, and Ibra worked there for quite a while. But when our main character, Carmi Berzato, when he takes over and changes everything a little bit, and don't worry, we're going to talk about Carmi as well. Don't worry, he's like our main character. We'll talk about him. Just be patient. But when he takes over the restaurant, it takes a bit more of a shift towards professionalism. So at first, they stay the beef, and then as things kind of go on, Carmi wants to change it into a more professional, high-end, fine dining restaurant. And the professionalism that Carmi is wanting to incorporate, Ibra kind of has a tough time with. He struggles to keep up since he's older and he's used to a certain way things are done, and it's hard once you get into a routine. He can't really get out of it, and it's really hard for him. He tries to learn and struggles over and over, and it's hard for him. And while maybe that's something kind of minor to include even with a supporting character, when you're focusing on characters, adding these kind of hardships even to supporting characters and not just the main characters makes them feel real. It makes them actual three-dimensional people that are worth watching, and you want to stick around and see even how the side characters' lives are panning out. And they do it absolutely fantastically in the show. It just makes you want to watch everybody's story, and it keeps you hooked over and over. And so, of course, let's talk about our main character, Carmi. Now, this man, he went to culinary school. He wanted to actually be a big league chef, essentially. So he took over the beef from his brother, Michael, who had died, and he eventually rebrands it to The Bear as a fine dining restaurant. And needless to say, this man lives his life in constant, crazy stress. It is unbelievable what this guy goes through and how he reacts to it. You see it every episode. He loses it on the daily. Every episode, I think there's a Carmi breakdown, and he loses it at his staff, his family, his friends, himself. I believe in the first two seasons in particular, he's focusing a lot on I think he had a suicide attempt. I can't remember exactly, but he just left a stove on fire and kind of watched it. And, it gets crazy. He goes through a whole lot, and he's dealing with a whole lot. He has a lot of trauma, and it's wild. And at first glance, it seems like he's kind of just an a-hole sometimes. And sometimes he definitely is. And he has to get over it sometimes. And usually it's way later that he can finally accept that he's in the wrong and apologize for something. But he's clearly very passionate about cooking, and these aspects of him are the flaws that he has to work with, and sometimes he backtracks. And, that happens. As humans, we make mistakes constantly, and no matter how hard we work at something, no matter what we do, no matter how good we think we are, sometimes we're going to fall backwards and lose some progress. Carmi and every single character in this show does this, and it makes them feel so real and raw. And that brings us to raw reality. So to make a story feel real, you obviously have to focus on the little things, not just the characters. Like, the characters are a big part of selling a story, because if you don't have real characters, you don't really have anything for the audience to connect to. You want the real emotions and you want them to do real things, but you also need them to feel real in the world that they live in. And it's like, could you see yourself existing in the world, or could you see this situation existing in the real world today? And The Bear spares no expense doing this, to the point that a lot of real chefs that see the show will both praise it for its realism because it's that accurate, but also they kind of hate it at the same time. Not because it's done badly, but because the experiences that are shown in the show are so much like real life, and sometimes it's showcasing really traumatizing things that happens within those industries, and they feel so real to the audience that it like kind of gives them some PTSD a little bit. So that's how focused they are. That kind of attention to detail in that kind of industry is so effectively captured and shown to the audience in something that is no easy feat. It's really hard to do something with that level of detail. Real chefs could have seen super tiny things and pick them out of the show and be very nitpicky and be like, that's not how that would happen. And it is not uncommon for stories like this to unravel when someone who understands the real world application of it, I don't know if application is the right word, but the real world scenario, if they find something that would not happen in real life, it's going to unravel. And the glory for this impressive realism has to go behind everyone in the production, the crew, cast, writers, producers, everybody. They all did so much work to bring it to life. And they even had chefs on the production team that were working with it to like make sure that they brought this world to an audience in a fashion that's almost undistinguishable of that in reality. Even if you're not a chef like they have in these shows, or like in other shows like this, if there are other occupations that they focus on, having such a attention to detail is going to be noticed. One small detail that I saw that was intriguing, that some people on like social media were talking about, like real chefs and things as they were kind of analyzing The Bear as well, is how the kitchen staff cleans the restaurant. So, and this is particularly in season 3, because now it's like a fine dining restaurant, so standards are a bit higher, but still, like, it's a very specific detail. So they get down on their hands and knees pretty often when they are cleaning. They'll clean it manually. And some people, when they see that, they're like, well, why don't they just use a mop, use a broom? That seems like the most sense. Why don't they do it? But when you're a fine dining establishment, you have to have everything like just right. It's the little details that really matter. And it's those kind of fine details that are focused on. In this, it's like the minuscule amount of food that's going to get stuck under things, dust, smudges, those kind of things have to get taken care of. And the only way to do that is get on your hands and knees. And that's something that real chefs will do. And the people behind the show, they know how the world works for these industry things and what people and real professionals are actually going to do. So they include it, even if the general audience doesn't know or doesn't get it. It's that level of detail that really, like, it still connects with you. You're like a fly on the wall in that situation. You're like, wow, this seems like how it is really done. And that's crazy to think about, but super interesting. And obviously the people that were behind the show, they had to go through those little details and make sure none of them were wrong. They had blood, sweat, and tears, struggling the whole way, which brings us to struggling and success. So in the real world, as this show very much strives to be like and copy almost to the exact detail, you can't really succeed at anything without first putting putting in a lot of work, making mistakes, and struggling every step of the way. And The Bear is no different in its storytelling. It is unbelievable the amount of mistakes and struggles that everybody in the show goes through. So in the show, things are constantly going wrong. It's not even like a question, just a trailer show. Things are going a little bit crazy. Characters are having breakdowns, like Carmi thinking about all the pressures of running a professional kitchen. Sid, who is like debating on leaving and starting her own restaurant or being the head chef at another restaurant. It's not making enough money. They're in huge debt. Character relationships are falling apart, both personal and professional. Food's getting messed up and sent back and thrown out. It's wild. So the struggle is real at The Bear, and it isn't even funny. It is unbelievable the amount of crazy things that happen. However, with struggles come good things as well. And we often see throughout each episode, usually at least one small moment that makes you feel some success for these characters. It gives you some relief. And you're like, I'm glad that they were finally able to figure that out. And you're like, that's great. In this latest season, we see some background of one character. Her name's Tina. She's one of the cooks at The Bear. And she was a struggling mom. She lost her job. And so this is like backstory. This is back before Carmi took over and when Michael was running the beef. So she lost her job. No one's going to hire her because, she's a bit older. She doesn't have a college degree, and everywhere's just needing young people. And when she finally gets a job at the beef, you are so happy for her success. And, it's even more so because now, like in the later seasons, you now know that she is working in a very successful area. So with that pre-existing knowledge, you're like, yes, we're so proud of you, Tina. Let's go. And we, as the audience, we want those little happy moments. We want the success moments, even if it's just where characters get over an argument and they make up. It is not easy for real life people to do that, but it is very satisfying once it actually happens. And the feeling of when you solve something and you feel successful, even if it's something small, you feel really good. And so when you're watching it in this show, you just feel the payoff. It feels good, and The Bear is just fantastic at making you feel that good feeling and then ruining it in the best way. And like how they do this over and over, and it gets you addicted to the show. It's like you don't want to stop watching. You want to just binge it all at once, which is both a good and bad thing, because I feel like The Bear would get even more attention and if it was released weekly, but it also would get a lot of hate because every episode leaves you dying to watch the next one. So if it was released weekly, I would like it just because it keeps me invested even longer. But at the same time, you're like, oh, this sucks. But how they do it is usually so at the beginning of an episode, there's like a conflict, and around the last act of the episode, the main conflict of the episode is most likely figured out and they've solved it, and you're like, oh, that's great. You have some tension release, and that's great. You're like, perfect. Never mind, because then in the last 5 minutes, they introduce a new conflict. The restaurant's broke. Someone is about to get a new job, or maybe they will quit. Whatever. They set up some new conflict in the last 5 minutes of the movie. So then you are like, what? And now you have to watch the next episode. It's like you can't start the conflict and then just like go to bed. Now you have to stay up and watch the next episode because they know you're just addicted to the show now because it's that good. And it's great. And we love it. But at the same time, we hate it because it's like, oh, just give me the release that I'm craving. But it is great and absolutely love it. So not only does The Bear just, they have a good story, they make the audience struggle so that we feel success with the characters. You feel connected to the story. You have the struggle, the realism, the people. everything. There's so much behind it, and it really gets us as an audience and has us addicted and loving it, and make sure that we all leave easily entertained. So now for our rating of The Bear. If you don't know our rating system, from least to worst, it goes garbage, ones is fine, right mood, quotable, go to, and all day, every day. And of course, I'm going to put The Bear because it's no question, it's an all day, every day kind of show. It is absolutely amazingly produced. It is unbelievable. And you have the great story and the great characters and the little details that get added. It's amazing. Feels real. It's like I'm looking into a whole nother world and I can't even distinguish it from reality. I literally can't find anything that I don't like about the show. If you can, please let me know, because I just really think it's that good. And, you know, you're allowed to have your opinion, but it is like one of those shows that is just near, if not perfection. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just so good. And lastly, we have our question of the week for you to answer in the comments here on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, wherever. It's just to get you invested in the conversation. And since The Bear is a cooking show, of course I have to ask, what is your favorite food? Mine has got to be a cheeseburger. I like a lot of foods. It is hard for me to hate something. There are a few foods that I don't like, but for the most part, I will eat pretty much anything. And a cheeseburger is my comfort food. Love it so much. And 9 times out of 10, that's what I'm going to be picking anytime I go out to eat, because they're just delicious. And they're hard to get wrong. So that'll be mine. Answer what is your favorite food in the comments. We want to know. And that's about it. So let us know. And that's it for this episode of Easily Entertained. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to give us a like and a follow so you can be notified of all the latest episodes, and be sure to tune in for the next episode to get all the latest on entertainment. And until next time, bye. You have been entertained.